Hello, dear students. Today, we'll be learning about chapter number 6 from your history textbook Towns, Traders, and Craftspersons. The way we have different types of cities in our present times, there were a variety of towns in the medieval period. A town is a human settlement that is smaller than a city. So, a town in the medieval era may be a temple town, an administrative center, commercial town, or a port town. The temple towns had huge temples and pilgrims visited there throughout the year. Then there were administrative centers where the administrative work of the kingdom was carried on. For example, the taxation, finance, etc. were carried out in the administrative centers. Then there were commercial towns where the buyers and the sellers met, and these towns acted as markets. Furthermore, there were port towns, which were situated near or even on the port. And this is the town from where the goods were imported from the far off lands and were exported to the far off lands. Apart from these towns, there were other towns which combined several functions of two different or even more towns all at once. For example, a town can be a temple town and an administrative center all together. An example of such a town is that of the Thanjavur. Thanjavur, which was the capital of the Chola dynasty, served an administrative center as well as a temple town. Thanjavur was the capital of the Cholas. It was an administrative town. This is situated on the banks of Kaveri. Rajarajeshwara temple, built by the Rajaraja Chola, is in this town. Kunjaramallam Rajaraja was the architect of this temple. Thanjavur has palaces with mandaps or pavilions where the king held his courts, and this is where the king issued orders to his subordinates. It had barracks for the army where the soldiers lived. There were bustling markets as well. These markets were famous for its grains, spices, clothes, and jewelry. The water supply in this town was very much in place as well. The wells and tanks provided water supply to the town. The Salaya weavers of Thanjavur made clothes. The fine clothes were produced for the king and the nobility, and the coarse cotton clothes were made for the masses. These clothes were also used for making flags to be used in the temple festivals. The sculptors or the sthapatis at Swami Milai used to make exquisite bronze idols and tall ornamental bell lamps. Thanjavur was a temple town as well. As I explained before, it had a temple, a huge temple named Rajarajeshwara Temple, which was built by Rajaraja Chola, which was architectured by Kunjaramallan Rajaraja. This temple was dedicated to Lord Shiva. The development of the temple towns. We have seen how elaborate and huge these temples were built by the rulers. But why were the temples built on such a large scale? The rulers built temples to demonstrate their devotion to the various deities that they followed, which also contributes to the reason for the growth of the temple towns. Additionally, they also endowed the temples with grants of lands and money for rituals. The kings also fed the pilgrims and the priests and also carried out all of the festivities that went on in these temples. Temples used their money to finance trade and banking. Gradually, many priests, artisans, workers, traders, etc., settled near the temple to cater to the needs of the temple as well as the pilgrims. This is how the temple towns grew. Some of the important towns which developed in this period and moved on to become towns were Bilaswamin in Bhilsa or Vidisha, which is situated in Madhya Pradesh, Vrindavan in Uttar Pradesh, Somnath in Gujarat, Madurai in Tamil Nadu, Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh, Kanchipuram and Tiruvannamalai in Tamil Nadu. From the 8th century onwards, the subcontinent was dotted with several small towns. These probably emerged from large villages. They usually had a mandapika or a mandi to which nearby villagers brought their produce to sell. They also had market streets called hatta or hart in later times, lined with shops. Usually a samanta or a zamindar built a fortified palace in or near these towns. They levied taxes on traders, artisans. These samantas levied heavy taxes on traders, artisans, and on the articles of trade. They thought it to be their right to collect these taxes. Traders. There were many kind of traders including Banjaras, Kshatriyas, Marwaris, Oswal and the Gujarati traders. Since traders had to pass through many kingdoms and forests, they usually traveled in caravans and formed guilds. Guilds are associations for certain tasks. They formed guilds to protect their interests. Manigramam and Nandadesi were two such guilds. These guilds traded extensively both within the peninsula and with the Southeast Asia and China. The towns on the west coast were home to Arab, Persian, Chinese, Jewish, and Syrian Christian traders. At the same time, Kabul in Afghanistan became politically and commercially important from the 16th century onwards. The trade in horses were primarily carried here. The craft that existed in this era. The craftspersons of Bidar were so famed that their inlay work in copper and silver called to be known as Bidri. The Panchalas or Vishwakarma community consisting of goldsmiths, bronzesmiths, blacksmiths, masons and carpenters were essential to the building of temples. They also played an important role in the construction of palaces, big buildings, tanks and reservoirs. Similarly, weavers such as the Salayyars or the Kaikolars emerged as prosperous communities making donations to the temples. Some aspects of the cloth making, like cotton, cleaning, spinning, and dyeing, became specialized and independent crafts. With this, we come to the end of this video. In the next video, we'll learn more about the major towns of Surat, Hampi, and Moslipatnam.